it's Alison Heikkila. Thanks so much for joining me. It's time for my latest Imagine video, and we're going to be making a beautiful sunset with fireworks sprays. So let's go through the supplies. We're going to start off with Paris Dusk, grape jelly, rosebud, then we've got Tangelo, and Dandelion. This is just some black embossing powder from Imagine, and then we've got VersaFine Clair in Nocturne. We've also got a Hero Art stamp set called the Color Layering Palm Tree, and it's really cute. So I'm going to be working on some smooth Bristol cardstock from Strathmore. We're going to start off with spraying, but we're also going to use a paintbrush. And I'm going to try to go in an arc motion with the sprays and the paintbrush because I want the sun to be kind of setting in the lower right corner. So I grabbed a jar of water and a brush. This is just a basic brush. Doesn't matter what kind you're using. And I'm just kind of making sure that the color is really filling up all of that white space. We have the Tangelo next, and I'm going to start blending these together a little bit, spreading them out. So obviously these are sprays, so they're meant to have a spray pattern, right? So I'm spritzing them down, and then I'm going to wind up changing my mind and actually dipping into some of them. I believe that this rosebud was a little clogged. I don't do the best job cleaning my sprays. So I'm going to open that up and then use the brush and just dip right into that color and apply it that way. So you can use these sprays in a multitude of ways. There's a little bit of gunk happening right there. That could be why it was clogged. And you can see how easy it is to just brush this across. And using a little bit of water really helps to get those colors to blend. And if you want, you can always go back into the previous color and blend them some more. So now I have grape jelly, and I kind of put a little too much. I really oversprayed. Like if you saw past where my camera was showing, like there is grape jelly everywhere. But it's all good because it is one of my favorite colors of fireworks sprays. So you can see that I'm going to just, blend those colors together. I'm using a bit of a stippling motion. I'm using a back and forth motion. I don't want brush strokes, but I want things to be blended well. The nice thing about working on the Bristol is that it's a really smooth surface, and you can really work those colors well without the cardstock pilling or anything like that. And you can see here I made a bit of a mess with the Paris Dusk, but it's all good because we can just go over it with the grape jelly, blend things out, and make it work. So you want to take your time when you're doing this. Don't try to rush through the process. Enjoy it. You can spray a little, you can brush a little on, you can go back and forth between techniques and styles, and just make sure that those colors are really blended and look fabulous, which really isn't all that hard to do. I'm grabbing the rosebud again because I just want to clean up that edge a bit. There's a little too much grape jelly kind of coming down into that rosebud, so I just want to fix it a little bit. Make sure that you've got some water to work with. You don't want to be dipping your brush into one color and then another because inevitably you'll wind up altering that original color. So just make sure that you really clean your brush off well and have something to wipe it on. I'm just using a microfiber cloth here. You could use a paper towel, whatever you've got. What's nice is these clean up really easily with water, so you don't have to worry too much about staining or anything like that. By the way, I'm working on the 1/2 ounce bottles, but all of these colors and then some are available in 2 ounce bottles as well. It just so happens that these particular colors I have in the 1/2 ounce. So you can see how gorgeous that looks. I've got my VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, and I want to make an area for the palm trees to rest on, some type of island, okay? So I'm tearing just a piece of copy paper, and I'm making sort of a mound, and I want it to be pretty rough. Here I'm just kind of eyeballing like where exactly I want it to be, how high do I want it to go. I don't want to cover too much of that dandelion color because it's really pretty, and that is our sun, essentially. So I don't want to hide it. So I've taped that down on the side, and I'm using just a cosmetic sponge. I store these in small Ziploc bags. Each VersaFine Clair has its own little cosmetic sponge that I use, and I'm just applying that color down. I could have gone a little heavier with it, but what we're going to do is just use some black embossing powder on top, so I knew it would stick pretty well. To clean up VersaFine Clair, I find that isopropyl alcohol is really the easiest thing to work with, and it's inexpensive and readily available. So I just sprayed that onto my Imagine craft mat and cleaned it up, and you'll see me pull that out a number of times throughout this process because we want to make sure that we clean our stamps in between. Of course, if that's your bag. I mean, I like to clean my stamps, but not everybody does. So here I am just arranging my palm trees. There's 2 layers here, but we're only going to use the solid layer. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where exactly I want them, which is why I pulled both layers out. I decided to start on the left side. I wasn't really sure at this point if I was going to use 2. My initial plan was to use 2 palm trees. But now as I'm kind of laying them out, I'm like, maybe it won't fit too well. I don't know if I really want to use them both. Spoiler alert, I'm going to wind up doing a second one. It does wind up needing a second one. But you could just leave it as one if you want to. So now I'm just going to apply the VersaFine Clair several times to each of my stamps because this is a new set for me. I've had it in my stash for a little while, but I haven't actually used it. So I need to make sure that I condition it well. So you might see me rubbing it on my hands a little bit, and then I'll need to stamp it a few times just to get it more prepped for stamping perfectly in the future. Not that it's stamping poorly, but it's not taking ink quite as well. There could still be some residue from manufacturing left on there and whatnot. So I'm kind of arranging that trunk. I don't want it perfectly straight. And you're going to see that I have a little bit of an oops. It's not a big deal. We're going to fix it. But you see that gap there? So at the top of the trunk is essentially coconuts, right? I'm not going to actually make it look like obvious coconuts, but I don't like that gap that I have between the palm leaves and the coconuts. You can see it with the grape jelly. So I'm grabbing this teeny tiny stamp that's part of the set. I honestly am not even sure what that part is for. I just grabbed it because it was nice and small. And you can see that it perfectly hides that little gap that I had there. I'll wind up needing to use that bad boy again because I misalign my trunk later on as well. But it's all good because we have an easy remedy for it. Okay, so now I've decided, let's just stop here and we're going to emboss. We're going to emboss what we have, and then we can decide if we want to move forward with another palm tree or any other stamps that we have in the set. So I dumped on some of my black embossing powder, and I'm just using a brush to kind of wipe away any excess powder that we have. By the way, you want to make sure that that fireworks spray layer is totally dry before you do this. I forgot to hit record when I actually melted the embossing powder, but you'll get to see me do it again in a minute. I apologize for that, but it's just straight up melting the powder with my embossing gun. That little island that I created didn't have quite enough powder on it. It wasn't black enough. Some of that yellow was really showing through and it was bothering me. So I went over it again with the VersaFine Clair, added more powder, and there we go. Now we have this perfectly solid little island. So I thought about my design for a little bit and I decided, I really like that hammock. I got to add that hammock. So I'm applying that first. Again, this is a new stamp set for me, so I need to re-ink a number of times. Also, the fireworks sprays tend to absorb a bit of the color. So if you want something really crisp black and deep black, you need to really apply several layers of ink because some of that color will get absorbed by the mica that's in the fireworks sprays. Not a big deal, but that's one of the main reasons why I decided that I wanted to use embossing powder for this whole background that we're creating. Or foreground, or scene. Let's just call it a scene. Okay, so I'm adding the next tree trunk here, and I'm cleaning it off. We're going to apply the palm leaves for this one, and you're going to see that I've got that gap again. I'm kind of rotating it around because I'm trying to decide, do I want it to be exactly in the same direction? Do I want it a little bit different? Winds up being pretty much the same because that's just the way the palm fronds are falling, It looks best that way. So I'm pushing that down and you can see, there it is, the gap. But it's not a big deal. We're going to use that teeny tiny stamp to just fill in that hole and you'll never know that it's there. I did that off camera because there was really no reason for you to see me do that part again. But here I am using just an old piece of scrap copy paper, dumping my powder back into the jar, let my heat gun warm up really well, and now you can watch that powder melt. That is still my favorite technique of all. Watching embossing powder melt, as basic as it is, just my favorite thing. Okay, so now I need a sentiment. That sky is really open, which I love, but we need to fill it in. And I thought that the sentiments in the color layering palm tree were a little tiny for this particular design that I had going. So I grabbed a very old Stampendous stamp set. Unfortunately, this is no longer available. My apologies. I'm sure you've got something in your stash that will work. It's called Ocean Sayings. So if you have a lot of Stampendous, maybe you have this one in your stash. But find something that works for you. And I'm just going to apply it to the top and have it kind of pushed over to the right side. So we're doing exactly the same thing that we've been doing all along, stamping it with the Nocturne ink, heat embossing it, and then it's going to look fabulous. Take a look at that. I love the shine. So now I've got my Brilliance Reinker, and the color is Moonlight, which is very appropriate for this. I've got it on a teeny acrylic block, and I'm just spritzing it with some water. And I've got an old paintbrush. I like this brush because it's kind of messed up. The bristles are kind of all over the place, and it helps me make this nice splatter. You see that huge drop? It's not a problem because the heat embossing acts as a resist. So all of those excess white stars that I've just created that are all over the palm trees, I can wipe up very easily. So what I made sure to do was keep my stars up high in the darkest area of the color. So it's not down by the sun. It's not in that middle area really. It's all in the blue, purple, and a teeny tiny bit in the rosebud area. Because I really, if you think about what happens when the sun is setting, you don't see those stars popping up where the sun is. I mean, yes, I know the sun is a star, but you guys know what I mean. So you see it where the sky is darkest. So that's why I made sure to have that concentrated up there in that upper left region. So I went around my card base with more Nocturne because I really like how it looked with all of that black. And then I just adhered it down. And guys, I love how this came out. And to make a card with such a cool looking sky like this one. That's it from me today. I hope you learned a couple of things. I will see you all very soon in my next video. Be well, stay safe, peace out.